Good afternoon. I want to thank everybody who joins us. My name is Olga Atamanova, and I want to thank everybody who joins us both virtually and in this studio. Ukraine Media Center Ukrinform starts its operation today. It's year 9 of the war and day 330 of the full-scale invasion of the Russian aggressor in our land. And I want to traditionally thank the representatives of all the mass media for the great job they're doing, for the information they're providing to the whole world to make them aware of what's going on in Ukraine. Our brief schedule of events for today is as follows. At 1600, joining us will be Mariana Reva, the spokesperson of the National Police of Ukraine. We will talk about the tragedy that happened yesterday and the consequences of that tragedy. Joining us right now in this studio is Oleksandr Kharchenko, director at the Energy Industry Research Center, and we will talk about the situation with our power grid. Mr. Oleksandr, good afternoon. So please tell us about the situation in our power grid, what's going on in our power distribution system. Good afternoon. The situation unfortunately remains complicated. The last attack inflicted significant damage. 9 power blocks of the coal power stations were damaged, which is a sufficient damage given the deficit of the energy generating capacities, which was substantial even before. There is also damage of the transformer substation of Ukrinform. Now the works are in progress in reconstruction, but talking about the generation, there may be no very quick reconstruction, quick rebuilding. We're talking about weeks here, so we will be able to see the first results of this reconstruction maybe in the middle of February. Mr. Oleksandr, so is this the first attack on our energy power generating capacities? No, it's not the first. All of our power stations, power plants suffered some damage before, but since the deficit of generation exists since December, it's obvious then when the attack was focused specifically on the power generating blocks, this damage is substantial comparing to the reserves, which are currently, so to say, limited. Can we currently talk about the deficit that exists in our power grid for the time being? Yes, it exists, and it's substantial. We're talking about more than 20% deficit in total, but in some districts it's even more, because the Kiev power district has about 40% deficit of total consumption, and we all feel it on a daily basis, unfortunately. And there is no prompt solution for this problem. What were the regions which suffered most this time? And now that we can see in Kiev and Kiev region, there are these emergency shutdowns, more than 6 hours, 6 hours off with 2 hours on. So how long, according to your estimates, we will have to live in conditions like these? Well, the situation is most complicated in Kiev and the areas along the front lines. Kherson, part of Kharkiv region, the situation there is very complicated. The situation is complicated in Odessa region too. Those are the areas mostly damaged and where the most deficit exists. And unfortunately, the schedule of the power shutdowns that we have now, I wouldn't be too optimistic about that. I wouldn't say that it would not improve within 2 to 3 weeks at least. And then we will be only able to see what will be the results of the following attacks. In Kiev region, the military governor stated that the critical infrastructure facilities will be fed by diesel generators to ensure better electric power supply to the consumers. Is it a proper solution to the situation? Well, honestly, I don't think that we could move to switch some substantial part of the consumers or substantial part of all the consuming facilities to reserve capacities, like diesel generators. It depends on the progress of the work. So the horizon we're talking about, like week or two, in some to improve the power supply in Kiev region in some substantial way, like critically, or in Kherson region, it wouldn't be possible. We need time for the equipment, for the necessary equipment to arrive. There is a great work being done in transportation. We need a lot of permits, of agreements. Those pieces of equipment, they're physically big, they're bulky, and that's a great piece of work. But it's in progress, but you cannot expedite it with just a wave of a magic stick. I'm seeing people working everything that they can to have that equipment arrive the quickest possible, to rebuild the capacities the quickest possible. Everything is happening 24/7. The other thing is that for many districts of Kiev region, there is a problem of not only power supply, but also the condition of the local power grid, the power distribution networks, because there are small emergencies happening which deteriorate the life of just regular people. So when there is a small emergency, even at the small substation, just to bring the emergency repair personnel, the technicians, the companies have to choose whether to repair this small emergency or to reestablish the power supply for like 20 or 30,000 people, or to choose, for example, the reestablishment of power supply for 800 people to repair in that small substation. And this is the problem that they have to solve on a daily basis. And some people feel it difficult because of these small emergencies. But those small emergencies result in some bad and difficult consequences for certain number of people. But we see that the Ukrinform does everything possible to find those repair brigades, repair teams, to reestablish the power supply for everybody for whom it is possible to do, and to keep the key facilities, to maintain those facilities, to continue those repair works, and those works don't stop 24/7. You mentioned the import of electric power. How would that solve our problem? Well, the first problem with import is obviously from Europe is obviously the money. So we need to understand where we would get the money to procure that electric power, because it's way more expensive in Europe than in Ukraine. Nobody is ready to supply it for free. And I know that there are negotiations in progress with the government, with the international partners, but for what I understand, there are no final solutions so far. Or do we understand it correct that if such resolution would have been taken, and if we import the electric power, it would still be a vulnerable area, because there is a logistics system required to be in place? Well, obviously the high voltage network should be able to deliver and redistribute the electric power. Now it's in condition when this problem is realistic, but we cannot guarantee everything. We cannot guarantee how the things would develop, but we only have to hope that the reinforcement of air defense would help to additionally cover and protect the critical infrastructure facilities. Dear colleagues, your questions, please. Good afternoon, Yana Koloda, Ukrinform. My question is as follows. According to your calculations, when will Ukraine receive the necessary amount of equipment so we could see that the situation with the electric power supply improves? My forecast is April. April is when everybody will feel the improvement in terms of electric power supply. In April, we will see the first waves of this heavy equipment coming, which is necessary to reestablish the proper electric power supply, and everybody will be able to feel it. And the next question is, should Ukrainians be ready for power shutdowns for the next winter? Well, I'm not ready to forecast it. When we understand what is the situation with the following missile attacks and what's the situation with our air defense, we will understand it better. But I know, and I keep hearing it, that the planning for the next year is already going on. The development of plans to make our winter most comfortable possible is already in progress. So the plan for gradual renewal and reconstruction for the beginning of autumn, for the spring, the equipment is being on order, but again, we cannot forecast what's gonna be happening with the attacks on the power infrastructure facilities. Mr. Oleksandr, we know that the weather conditions influence heavily on the situation with the power shutdowns. Now that temperature is pretty high, but it doesn't influence, right? No, it does influence. It does influence sufficiently, because if the temperature would have been below zero, the things would have been worse. What's going on with our nuclear power plants? Well, for what I know, according to the latest statistics, there are 2 blocks under maintenance currently, and Energoatom works very hard on bringing them back in operation. Maybe you have any news regarding the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant and the security situation there. Well, you know, there is a lot of activities around Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant and the visit of IAEA and location of the additional IAEA missions in our nuclear power plants. Those are the right steps, but I don't feel that they may lead to some concrete results, such as the return of Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant under control of Ukraine. And I think that only the actions of the armed forces will bring certain result, because all other things, I see no grounds to state that the Moscow regime is ready for some constructive negotiation. As of today, is there a mission of IAEA already in our power plants? Yes, I think that they are already in 2 power plants, and they should start working on the 3rd one shortly. Thank you for joining us, Mr. Oleksandr. I'm reminding you, joining us was Oleksandr Kharchenko, the Director of Energy Industry Research Center. Bear with us. Our next briefing is at 1600. We will talk about the tragedy that happened yesterday. Trust in our armed forces, work together for the victory, and glory to Ukraine.